Good evening. Welcome to the April 1st meeting of the Stillwater City Council. I will call this meeting to order and ask you all to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I thought the rest of the city council was not going to show up tonight as some sort of April Fool's joke on me, but they made it. Okay, we will start tonight with some proclamations and presentations under item 3 on the agenda. And item A, Fair Housing Month. Do we have a representative? Are you going to come up? I have a proclamation here in recognition of Fair Housing Month that I'll read. Whereas April 1st, 2019 marks the 51st anniversary of the passage of the U.S. Fair Housing Law, Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968 as amended, which enunciates a national policy of fair housing without regard to race, color, creed, religion, national origin, gender, familial status, sexual orientation, and handicap, and encourages fair housing opportunities for all citizens. And whereas the City of Stillwater is committed to support the Fair Housing Law, Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968 by continuing to address discrimination in our community, to support programs that will educate the public about the right to equal housing opportunities, and to help assure every citizen of their right to fair housing. Now, therefore, I, William Joyce, Mayor of the City of Stillwater, do hereby declare April 2019 as Fair Housing Month in Stillwater and urge all citizens to support fair housing throughout the year. Okay, item B, update on Our Daily Bread from Director Becky Taylor. Welcome, Becky. Is this microphone working?
You're getting feedback.
I'm echoing.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the time to provide an update about Our Daily Bread Food Resource Center. Our Daily Bread has been open for a year and a half now, and we've been quite busy. The mission statement of Our Daily Bread is to feed our community collaboratively and provide connections that enable lasting change. That first portion, feeding our community collaboratively, I hear the echo, it's like a superhero. The City of Stillwater has been an instrumental partner in our success. So thank you for your support, your encouragement, and your partnership. The biggest examples of this collaboration with us to feed our community is with leasing our building to us for $1 a year. That rent just can't be beat. Yeah.
It's not just that mic, I don't think.
Just talk real loud. Okay, is this good? I'm still echoing, but that's okay. Keeps it exciting. Most recently, you allocated more space to Our Daily Bread for our garden project with the green space to the east and the garden shed to the south. I'm excited about the garden at Our Daily Bread and the space it will create for both fresh food production and a shared space for both guests, volunteers, and the larger community. So thank you very much for that gift. I want to also take this time while I'm up here to share with you some highlights from over the past year and a half, if you don't mind. Since opening in September of 2017, Our Daily Bread has filled over 19,000 grocery carts full of food to fill our hungry neighbors' refrigerators, freezers, and pantries. That's roughly 1,000 carts a month. The 19,000 grocery carts provided food for nearly 49,000 people living in Payne County. Each household of one goes home with nearly $100 worth of groceries. And because of our ability to leverage resources and utilize our local partners, Our Daily Bread spends $2.50 on that same cart of groceries. This is in large part because of our retail recovery program. Every day, volunteers pick up from 7 different retail recovery partners in Stillwater, and we pick up the food that can no longer be sold in the grocery stores. We get about 40,000 pounds of good food a month through this program. That's 40,000 pounds of food that would go in the dumpster if Our Daily Bread did not exist and began redistributing it. In addition to offering food assistance to those that need it in Payne County, Our Daily Bread is also working on increasing the resources offered through our resource center. Our additional resources are made possible through our local partnerships, and they include cooking classes in our teaching kitchen, the baby mobile that provides formula and diapers to babies, a pre-diabetes class, basic budgeting classes, healthy samples and recipes, SNAP signups, and of course our garden. All of these additional resources aim to help the whole person, knowing full well that hunger is a symptom of a larger problem. As we grow, we hope to include even more things that might help lift a family out of the cycle of poverty, and this is best done collaborating with other local agencies, businesses, families, OSU, the city, and more. There are 3 simple ways that people who call Stillwater home can continue to do to help our effort. The first is volunteer. It takes a village to feed our county, and we are always in need of help. In this past year alone, we accumulated over 36,000 volunteer hours. Our volunteers shop with guests, stock the shelves, work in the garden, and even stock the freezer, and we're grateful for each hour a volunteer gives us. Someone can also donate. Our daily bread exists because of the generosity of our community. And the third is advocate. I ask each of you to continue using your position and your platform to advocate for our hungry neighbors. Remember that the people needing food assistance are just like you, and they're just like me. Their kids sit next to my kids at school. They are veterans, they're school employees, they're widows, parents of foster kids, they're nurses taking care of our aging parents in nursing homes, and they're students. Hunger affects our community as a whole, so it only makes sense that our community must work together, look out after each other, and advocate on behalf of our neighbors whose voices are not always heard. So thank you again for your time, and most importantly for your partnership and all that you've given us to help make our daily bread possible. I'm excited about the future of our city and of our daily bread as we continue working together to fight hunger. So thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Becky. We really appreciate everything that you and the organization have and are doing in Stillwater. Certainly the mission is a very important one, and I love to see the volunteer statistics as well, because it has been such a great collaborative effort of churches and community groups and OSU students and just citizens in town. So it's been fantastic. We appreciate it very much.
And I think it's a great program because it allows those that aren't able to necessarily feed themselves as well be able to do it in a dignified way. And I think that's probably one of the most, was one of the goals of the whole program, and I think that you guys have done a great job in doing that, so thank you.
Thanks, Becky. Okay, do we need to fix the AV?
If I may, Mayor, and I don't know if you can hear this. You can? Okay. We have been having work done on our television system and the rebroadcast system, ironically, to get better audio. And something has obviously gone awry, so for that we apologize.
You always have to break a couple eggs to make an omelet, right?
Exactly.
Well, we'll power through. We'll move to item 4 on the agenda, the consent docket. Counselors, any questions, comments, or motions on the consent docket?
Motion to approve the consent docket.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Please vote. With a vote of 4-0, the consent docket is approved. That takes us to public comment on agenda items not scheduled for public hearing. I do have one person signed up. No, I don't. I have more than one person signed up. I have 3 people signed up to talk about one of our ordinances on for tonight. So when I call you up, please state your name and your address for the record. I think you have, 3 minutes for this one? 3 minutes. Let us know what you think about the item you're here to speak about. We will start with Mariana Lansford.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I am Mariana Caitlin Lansford, and I am here as a recreational therapy student, and I wanted to, on behalf of, Nikki, and just in light of how the chickens have helped her with her anxiety, I wanted to speak on that.
Go ahead.
Okay. So Nikki has been my friend for a really long time. I have seen firsthand how these chickens have helped her cope with her anxiety. And as a recreational therapist, I think it's very important to have as many tools in your bag as you can for helping the client express their needs, and I just feel like her need for her chickens is valid, and that it really does help with their anxiety, just like any other pet. I believe that chickens just can be not only a resource for like giving food or helping kids learn where food comes from, but just also just being like kind of like a stabilizing source, kind of like a dog or a cat. So and I just want her to be able to I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous.
It's all right. It's okay.
I just want her to be able to have her source of coping for within the Stillwater limits, because I think it's like if she was my client, for example, like I would really like want her independence to be let me rephrase that, I'm sorry. So I would really want her to be able to freely express like herself and just like I just really think she just needs the chickens, and that, you know, as a recreational therapist, I think it's like very important. I know I keep going back to that, but I think it's just very important to know your client, and I just as a friend, I really want to be here to support her and share that it really means a lot to me that these chickens are helping her and stabilizing her through her anxiety.
Good. Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. Dan Yost.
Good evening. Appreciate the opportunity to come and speak. I'll keep my comments brief indeed. Just wanted to speak in support of 3367 for the chickens as well. Though I may look like a chicken farmer with the beard, I'm not a chicken man. But I have to say that just as somebody who doesn't really have a lot of experience with that, somebody who's not really been around it growing up and so on, I've kind of been made a believer by seeing how well it can work, seeing the benefits that it can bring to a family, things that people tend to talk about, responsibility for kids. You certainly have things like eggs for the family and so on. That's kind of nice, but I've just seen the benefits kind of as a pet, and just as a benefit to the local ecosystem and so on, things I hadn't really intended to, or that I hadn't really anticipated. And so, you know, with anything, I think there's a balance of trade-offs that has to be made. You know, you have any sort of new ordinance or animals in town and so on, there's certainly negative trade-offs as well that have to be balanced. And from what I can tell from the ordinance that was proposed, it seems like it tries to address some of those trade-offs. So anyway, I just wanted to say that I appreciate the opportunity to consider that. I appreciate that the council is doing so. And as somebody who's kind of come at it with a bit of a skeptical view early on and kind of been, had my eyes opened a little bit, I found it to be a worthwhile thing and something that it's good to let citizens be able to do if they want to do that sort of thing. So appreciate that.
Great. Thank you. Next up, Teresa Dustin.
Good evening. My name's Teresa Dustin, and do you need my address?
Sure.
106 Crestwood Court. That's up off of Jardo and 3rd, about on the east side. And a long time ago, I've had chickens and so forth, but this go around for me having chickens has been such a different experience, because I've really gotten to know my chickens. I went to get them about 3 years ago, and it was a day that I was very, very depressed, and I knew I was thinking about getting a pet of some kind, and I thought about the expense, the nuisance, and all of that, and I was at Atwood's and I said, today's the day. And so I went ahead and got 3, one of which turned out to be a rare breed and turned out to be a rooster. Now, I do live in a cul-de-sac. There's a lot of space and trees around in the back. But little by little, as these 3 grew up, my neighbors and all, they go, oh, I love hearing your rooster. Now, I know in the ordinance that we're not going to be doing roosters, and that's okay. Just for the benefit of even having hens, because recently I lost that rooster, very sadly, December 21st. And, you know, now I get to experience the grieving of the hen and take her through all of that. Now, even in this little bit that I've told you, you can see that I've learned so much, because I didn't know chickens went through grief. They're just chickens. And I think people have that attitude, and the ordinances from other times, you know, would probably think of chickens as agricultural animals, and therefore, and I think that's what the old ordinances and stuff were about. Because I would like to see people start regarding chickens just as we regard a cat or a dog. They're much less expensive to keep. They actually are the ones that are preyed upon, and plus for children and so forth, it gives more diversity in the animal systems because they're descendants of dinosaurs, as we know, instead of mammals. And so that gives another experience of, well, how come they do this versus these other things? I'm amazed at the number of people who don't understand how it is a hen can lay eggs and not have to have a rooster for her to lay the eggs. So, see, we have a lot of education. So there's the personal and emotional support part. There's the education part. And I think just getting this transformation of the getting chickens as pets mainstreamed. Now, when you look up online at Walmart and you find that you can get chicken diapers for those who keep chickens in their house, which they do, that they are getting very much more mainstreamed. And so I really appreciate your support and interest in getting this new ordinance passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Thank you to everyone who came and spoke. We certainly do appreciate the input and letting us know your feelings on the issue. Okay. That takes us down to item 7, public hearings. 7A, receive public comment regarding a request for specific use permit at a property addressed as 2319 East 6th Avenue to allow a medical marijuana dispensary in the CG Commercial General Zoning District. This is CC-19-38. Mr. Dorman, did we have good notice on this item?
Yes, sir.
Mr. McNichol.
Assistant City Manager Paula Dennison will provide that report, and let me say that I'm told if you speak up, that's coming across fine on for the people at home. So,
okay. Good.
It may feed back if you pull it up that high. I don't know.
Okay, I won't pull it up then. This is a specific use permit request for a dispensary located at 2319 East 6th Avenue. The area is the hatched part on the south side of 6th Avenue. This is a multi-bay facility, so one of the bays is going to have the dispensary located in it. As you can see, the door that is circled is going to be the primary entrance to the dispensary. Signage is going to be compliant, as is the parking that's located on site, so they are not going to have to add any additional parking to the property. I will answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Paula. Councilors, any questions at this point? This time I will open and close the public hearing, as we don't have anyone signed up to speak, and ask Paula for the Planning Commission's recommendations.
Yes, the Planning Commission recommends approval of the specific use permit for a dispensary on a 3-0 vote.
Thank you, Paula. Councilors, questions, comments, or discussion, or motions on the item? And I guess the real important question is, who's going to represent Dr. Wedlake's no vote on this one?
I am.
Okay, are you?
Yes.
Is there a motion?
I guess it's you or I. Motion to approve the specific use permit at property addressed at 2319 East 6th Avenue.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the specific use permit. Please vote. With a vote of 3 to 1, that item is approved. That takes us to 7B, receive public comment regarding a request for a specific use permit at property addressed as 2020 North Jardo Road to allow medical marijuana indoor commercial grow facility in the IL Light Industrial Zoning District. This is CC-19-37. Mr. Dorman, did we have good notice on this item?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Dennison.
Yes, thank you. This is our second commercial grow facility located at 2020 North Jardo. It is the very small hatched area just above the L in the IL zoning district on the west side of Jardo. Opposite on the other side of Jardo, that is outside of city limits. That's why there's no zoning on this particular map. This is again, it's a multi-use, multi-bay facility, and this is the bay that they are going to be operating this grow facility out of. And be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Paula. This time I will open and close the public hearing. We have no one signed up to speak on this item, and ask Paula for Planning Commission recommendation.
Planning Commission sends a unanimous recommendation of approval.
Councilors, comments, discussion, or motion?
I am taking up Dr. Wedlake's flag, and that's my position.
We appreciate that.
Motion to approve the specific use permit at property addressed at 2020 North Jardo Road.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the specific use permit. Please vote.
Oh, maybe it's me.
With a vote of 3 to 1, that item is approved. Thank you, Paula. You're going to stay up there, I guess, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
We'll move to item 8, general orders, form-based code standards outline and moratorium extension, CC-19-39. Take it away.
Okay, this is solely a discussion to get direction from the council. If you recall, we have had a number of changes to our form-based code, the regulations, particularly related to the public realm requirements. The most recent was when an enterprise here in Stillwater was looking to expand their parking lot, and because of how many additional spaces they wanted to put in, that parking lot expansion was going to cost 3 to 4 times the installation of the parking lot, solely because of the public realm requirements that were triggered. So the council placed a moratorium on the public realm requirements, and in that time we have been have a number of, actually 2 options to bring before you. Before I get into what the options are, as indicated in your report, I did have discussion with the Builders Relations Committee this past Wednesday at their regular meeting. We had brought 2 designers in. They had conversations with city staff, and one of the options that is in your report actually came from them. So the builders group was very receptive to us coming back to the council and asking for time along with us with the direction given by the council for us to proceed and actually build the form-based code. So with all of that, I will briefly go through what our options are. Option 1 is going to utilize the map that is on the screen. This is a combination land use and a street typology or transportation map. It identifies with the different colors of the areas. That identifies commercial, residential, retail, mixed use, etc. Each street within the form-based code area, and we're not recommending that the form-based code area change. This is just a redo of the regulations. Each street within the area is also color-coded, and those colors only represent 4 streets. Currently, we have 9 or 10 different street cross-sections in the form-based code. We're looking to reduce it to 4, that being a boulevard, neighborhood corridor, commercial corridor, and connector corridor. I will note that the hatched blue that you can barely see in some of the areas along the perimeter is just the district boundary. The more purple thick hatched area, this is the existing pedestrian corridor. It extends from the downtown area and it connects up to Hall of Fame, and then it connects west across 4th Avenue, up Knobloch and up Washington. So this is the basis for both of the options. Anyone looking at this map could identify the street and therefore the public realm requirements based solely on this street topology. The land use would not change the transects, but I'll get into option 2, go ahead and land use it from this point. The transect 5 and the transect 6 that we currently have in lieu of the standard Euclidean zoning in this area, those will remain. This land use is looking more to not the zoning, i.e. the transect, but the use of the land. If the use is proposed to be residential, then you would look in these residential areas or commercial, any of the others. So from your street and your land use, under option 1, we had set up a grid, and this is not completely filled out. It is an example to where, looking across the top, if you're on a commercial corridor and you want to establish an arts and culture land use, then that would tell you the specific signage, parking, et cetera, that will be required. On the private side, it will also indicate the parking on street, the landscaping, the light, the street lights that would be necessitated with this use, mixture of use and street. So starting back, and that's all option 1. Option 2, we are looking at simply the street profiles and again the T5 and the T6 as they currently exist. So the only changes on option 2 will be the streets. Once again, you can indicate what street your property is located on. It will already be regulated by the T5 and the T6 as to what the uses, the heights, setbacks, those type of private issues. The street, as I mentioned earlier, will dictate the public realm. So this is an example with a neighborhood street. It identifies, summarizes it. It does talk about the sidewalks, any amenities, building, windows, because we want to make sure that on especially the non-residential corridors that we have a certain percentage of window, particularly on the ground floor, so that there is that public-private interaction with the passing customers. We will also be able to give pictures of places here in Stillwater and elsewhere that represent what that neighborhood corridor street typology looks like. One of the things that we wanted to, and all of this is a very high-level, loose analysis proposing these options. But one of the things we did want to make sure that we had included in this presentation for your consideration is an example. If you were building under today's form-based code as it is, or one of the 2 options that we're discussing this evening. Under today's form-based code, we have identified that it takes 7 different steps to know what is expected. And this is from the developer standpoint as well as the designer standpoint. And there's still a piece of this that is missing. That piece is the financing part of it, of the public realm. Under the proposed, either option 1 or option 2, we have identified 3 steps only in being able to look and see what the expectation is of any properties that are going to be developed in this area based on either option 1, the street and land use, or option 2, the street and the transects. And this option, this does include the 3rd step as the financing option. That will be, again with direction from council, that will be one of the pieces that staff will be working on. We'll be continuing to work with designers and developers as to their recommendations of how that financing of the public realm can be handled. We've already got a few ideas as we have briefly outlined them in the staff report. I'll be happy to answer any questions. We are recommending that the council give us direction for option 2. And this does come from the 2 design engineers that we pulled in and had fairly lengthy discussions with, as well as the builders group.
Thank you, Paula. Councilors, questions for Paula at this point?
Paula, it certainly looks like you've streamlined some of the steps and defined them better by putting them in steps 1 and 2. What challenges or as far as the financing options, because that seems to be a big part of this as well. So can you give us any idea on what those challenges may be or what thought processes are, or are you kind of still at the ground stage of that?
One of the opportunities that is already in existing is TIF. This entire area, the form-based code area, is in the increment district number 3, the one that was recently adopted by the council less than a year ago. So that is one opportunity for funding of the public realm that we've already got out there. Another opportunity is a business improvement district. And just like when the bid was active in the downtown, a lot of the resources, the financial resources from that bid, went to some public improvements. Landscaping at intersections was a major one. Didn't go for necessarily individual property improvements unless it was through the grant process. So without a bid being established right now, that does provide some flexibility as to how that financial resources could be used if a bid were to be established. Another one is an improvement district or an assessment district based on what the street indicates, the street type indicates the public realm to be, and how many linear feet of frontage each property has along that street. They would pay into a fund that would come along and they would make the the city would make the improvements to that street based on the money that had been paid into it. So that's just our initial evaluation, yes. And we have discussed those with the development community.
And what do they think?
They like that we are discussing it now as an entire package. That is their preference. One of the things that they have mentioned to staff and mentioned in the builders group meeting was no matter the requirements in the code, as long as the designers and the developers are aware when they open that code up and they get through there and they read it and sit down and have a conversation, if they know what all of the expectations and requirements are, then they're good. So that's the greatest feedback that we've gotten so far to this point.
So I have a feeling there's some people out here who have not been knee-deep in this for 5 years, like you have, or for 3 years like I have. So just kind of big picture form-based code, what we're trying to do here, right? We passed this 2015, correct? Initially? I think I saw that in here.
Yes.
2015?
Yes, it was effective July 1 of 15.
And the idea was we want this area to redevelop in a sort of mixed-use fashion. We want to improve the streets. We want to have better streetscapes. We want it to be more walkable, more livable, all that kind of stuff. And we're basically making developers pay. When you come develop something along the side of the street, we want you to pay the costs of making the street and the sidewalk and the public realm stuff nice.
Correct.
I mean, that's basically what we did. But we originally didn't pass any way to finance that for them. We just said, you're going to spend $500,000 fixing up this building. You're going to have to spend however much more it takes to fix the street up, which is not normally something you have to do.
Correct.
So we're trying to solve that problem at one level with this, correct?
Yes.
And then, so to me, what this sounds like is basically just other than that, a simplification of trying to figure out under the existing code, all those 9, 8, 10 steps, whatever it is, that say, okay, where is it located? What's the traffic pattern? What street? And figure out all those things. We're just going to try to create a much more cohesive, okay, this is the kind of street it's on. Here's a picture of what it should look like, and kind of put all that in one neat small package instead of having to go to 6 different pages to find it.
Exactly.
Okay. So,
as well as the financing piece.
Yes. So simplifying down the requirements so we can just sort of say, visually, this is the look we're trying to accomplish and sort of the function we're trying to accomplish in the public realm. And then here also are some options where you can help, we can figure out how this is going to get paid for.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, that's the main objective of us coming back to y'all with this proposal, this idea, if you will.
Because, I mean, we've seen, I think all of us, we've talked on the council before, we like the idea of having this area redevelop in this way and having this sort of cohesive streetscape and having this walkability and getting, you know, nicer sort of public accommodations in the area, but we haven't seen it do what we hoped it would do, right? We've had big apartment buildings come up, which are, honestly, there's value in those, and they've done nice, you know, I love the sidewalks around those new ones that are there now, and the streets will be fixed soon. But we haven't seen the smaller developments. So this, in speaking with the Builder Relation Committee, you feel like this will have the effect of starting to see some of that infill between the big developments happen?
Yes, I believe it will. One of their primary concerns from the smaller developer and the smaller property owner, if you will, is the cost of the public realm requirements that they solely are bearing at this point in time. Just as the example that I had given earlier about expanding a parking lot. The cost to them, it's not typically incorporated into their business model for making improvements, starting a new business, tearing down a structure and rebuilding. Under this, we are very confident that it will jumpstart some of the smaller properties to be redeveloped in the area. Of course, we still anticipate some of the larger when multiple properties are purchased by a single person for the redevelopment. I would also like to say, for those that, as you said, Mayor, have not been involved in this for the last few years, one of the reasons that this area was chosen for the form-based code, we have a corridor redevelopment plan that really identifies from more of an aesthetic perspective what the vision is for this area. So when that corridor redevelopment plan was adopted, next came the how are we going to ensure that that vision is achieved, and that's where form-based code was recommended through the Planning Commission and to the council. Primarily because this area of our community, you have just about every opportunity, every use, every uniqueness that you could find throughout the entire rest of the community. It's all located in this one area. It's very unique, it's very special, and that's a driving force for having the form-based code, which is more of an integrated way to manage land use as opposed to a separationist way to manage land use. Any other questions? I know this is a lot to just throw at you.
Well, and so you all are saying we prefer option 2, staff prefers option 2, which tell us a little bit about why you feel option 2 is better to pursue at this point than option 1.
On option 2, we already have the transects established and the summary pages already for them. Those are working fairly well. It's not a matter of the land use necessarily as it is the street type and what those public realm requirements are. So that's where our primary focus will be, is adjusting those street types and the requirements for that public realm. We do believe that the transects do need to be reevaluated and looked at. They can be much more clear. They can be displayed more simply and less confusing as they currently are. So we would be looking at the whole package, but since we already have that pretty good base for those transects and therefore the uses, we would like to continue with that.
Okay.
I will, on a side note also, depending on what your decision is and your guidance, we do have on the agenda a resolution tonight that does ask for you to extend this moratorium. The moratorium expires April 5th, and we would like for it to be extended to July 1st. That would give us time to come back through the Planning Commission to the council with a fully developed package.
Okay.
And that moratorium is on curb to curb.
Yes, ma'am. Back of curb, I've got it right here. Back of curb, it also, any of the streets where sidewalks were non-existent or substandard, it did not release the requirement to put in a sidewalk.
Okay, counselors, further questions or comments here?
So the actual expectation for how these developments in this area have not changed. They're just simplified.
Simplified.
They're being provided in a simplified format, right? Or have we stripped things from them as well?
I actually believe we are going to be more precise on what the requirements are. And I'll go back to using the windows on the first floor for the corridors other than residential. That is we would like to see it in our current form-based code. On these streets, we can specifically say these are the minimum requirements and actually put forth what those minimum required expectations are. So we will be beefing up, I hate to use that term, but there will be some that are more pointedly addressed where they have not been in the past.
But I think that kind of speaks to what you guys were saying earlier, that people kind of don't understand exactly what's expected of them, and that's one of the challenges that they have is kind of what are we expected to do. And so if we lay that out and then also add an implementation component from a financing perspective,
Yes.
my hope would be that makes that all of a sudden a much more feasible project, especially for, and I think too, for the smaller developers that are working on infill projects, having a simplified format. I mean, a lot of times these are folks that are working maybe on their first development, maybe their first redevelopment. They may not be as practiced and as savvy with some of the language that comes, and I mean, it can be really complicated and thick. So I appreciate that you're looking at it from that perspective and hopes. I mean, if our goal is to help build that infill momentum, I think having a simplified kind of format that is very clear and precise, and that this is what we expect, this is how we can help finance that, this is how we can all move forward with these expectations in this part of our community. I think that's really helpful.
I really do like the stronger language on this is how it will be, not we would like it to be, because it also gives confidence to anyone who's being asked to put more money into a design that their next door neighbor is going to look the same or have to put in the same amount of effort and money. And it just brings a much more level playing field. So I'm really happy to hear that.
On the subject of financing options, I mean, we discussed the fact that this is within the Stillwater reinvestment plan boundaries, which the TIF is one piece of that. It also, yes, that plan does talk about bringing in potentially bid districts and other assessment districts and trying to create a toolbox, a varied toolbox of potential financing. So that seems to fit what we are trying to do within that larger reinvestment plan. So I am excited to see what other sorts of things we can bring to the table, so that it's not, one way or no way, right? That we have options for people. So yeah, this is, I think, a good, some adaptability from the city's perspective, figuring out, okay, this isn't working great. Let's figure out how we can change it to make it work a little better. And I'm happy to see that. So I don't think we need a particular motion or anything on this one, or do we? You want us
Other
to-
than the moratorium
We do need that.
We do
Is
need to
that on
vote
the-
on that. Good. And I will just tell you that the moratorium language is basically identical to the one you approved previously.
Yeah.
With the addition of a couple of findings that you had previously adopted a moratorium. And it expressly states that this is an extension of the existing moratorium
Okay.
for continuity's sake.
Okay.
I will just add a little sidebar. You don't see planners get giddy, but when we were working through this, I thought Lance was to the point of being giddy, that we were actually going to be able to have something that not only the development community, but staff would be easier for us as well.
Take a picture next time you see
I will,
Lance getting.
yes, I will.
Thank you, Paula. All right, that does take us down to resolutions, item 9, and resolution 2019-3 is a resolution establishing a temporary moratorium on the application of public realm requirements on certain new and redeveloped projects located within the form-based code district as defined by Chapter 23 of the Stillwater City Code. This is the specific moratorium we've just been speaking about. Councilors, questions, comments, or motions?
And Paula, do you think that you will have the financing, we're waiting on the financing piece of this?
I actually think the financing piece, if we're going to just build a toolbox for which form of financing is most suitable for whomever the developer is and their type of activity that they're developing, I think that will probably be the easier part
Okay.
than
so it's
redoing the rest of it.
Cleaning up the Transact
Yes.
language. Okay, so, and that will be done by
July.
July.
By July 1, that's what we're shooting for, yes.
Thank you.
Motion to approve resolution 2019-3.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Please vote. With a vote of 4-0, that resolution is approved. Thank you, Paula and Lance and all of your team for the work that you're doing in that area. All right, item 9B, resolutions. Resolution 2019-4, a resolution approving the incurrence of indebtedness by the Stillwater Medical Center Authority in the principal amount of $12 million for the purposes of financing capital improvements to the Stillwater Medical Center, approving the waiver of competitive bidding on such indebtedness and containing other provisions relating thereto. Mr. Dorman, would you like to give us a brief introduction on this one?
Just very briefly, I think the title is pretty much descriptive of what's going on here. It's for some new construction at the hospital. And the request is here before you tonight because the lender has asked that the beneficiary also approve the issuance of the debt. And beyond that, I have Mr. Kaiser and Mr. Lovelace here who can answer any other questions.
This, I think, is specifically for the new maternity, women's labor and delivery, which is pretty exciting. That's the hospital has been doing quite a bit of growth and expansion, and I think succeeding very well in providing services to the community. So, questions or comments or motions on this, councilors?
Motion to adopt resolution 2019-4.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Please vote. With a vote of 4-0, that resolution is approved. All right, that takes us down to item 10, ordinances on first reading. Ordinance number 3367, an ordinance amending the Stillwater City Code by amending Chapter 6, Animals, to create Article 5, Backyard Chickens, Section 6-81, Definitions, Section 6-82, Keeping of Backyard Chickens Permitted, Requirements, and Section 6-83, Violation, providing for repealer and severability. All right. Councilors, questions or comments about the chicken ordinance?
I just want to say thank you to everyone who has given input, has said reasons why this is valuable to them. I have learned more about this than I had ever thought I would. But I find value in it. I think it's important that we need to look at these ordinances that were done years ago for a certain reason and then need to be re-looked at again and thought of in a new way. And so I appreciate Mr. Dorman's input into this. You have them as well, and so it's just as a, I know you don't live in town, but I appreciate the fact that you took the time to look this over, and so appreciate it.
Yeah, and we've, I know, used the university extensions guidelines on this, and other cities and ordinances, and talked to a number of people in town and folks who have asked for this. So I think it's a good example of people in town with a passion and a concern and bringing it to us, and us trying to weigh those concerns. And so I hope this is a good step forward that we can continue to evaluate and see if it addresses the needs that need to be addressed.
Ready?
I'm ready when you are.
Motion to advance ordinance number 3367 to second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to advance the ordinance to second reading. Please vote. By a vote of 4-0, that ordinance is advanced to second reading. Item 10B, ordinance 3433, an ordinance amending Chapter 18 of the Stillwater City Code titled Environment, Article 6, Dilapidated Buildings, by revising Section 18152, Definitions, providing for severability, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Dorman.
Just very briefly, this amendment will basically bring the definition of dilapidated structure that's in the city code provisions that deal with municipal court enforcement of dilapidated building provisions into sync with the language in the existing state statute. So this is basically a housekeeping matter.
Is it a more lenient or more stringent requirement under state law?
Well, for purposes of municipal court prosecution, it would be more lenient. And what we're doing is just basically using the same standard that the state does, which is 18 months of continuous boarding up of the structure.
So we're changing it to 18 months.
Yes, we're making it, we're narrowing the time limit.
Okay. So you can have a building boarded up for a shorter amount of time in Stillwater before there's our ability to prosecute the matter.
To prosecute it in municipal court. This doesn't impact our ability to deal with one in the context of actually taking a structure down through the abatement process. We follow state law on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So basically, Judge Ron was looking for more municipal court matters on these.
We try not to put too much on her docket. She has a lot to do as it is.
All right, counselors, questions or comments or motions on this item?
Just a question on the definition of a dilapidated building. It just has to meet one of those requirements?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Anything further, counselors? We have something further.
Is it motion to adopt?
Is it, this is...
This is on first reading.
First reading.
Motion to advance ordinance number 3433 to second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to advance ordinance 3433 to second reading. Please vote. With a vote of 4-0, that ordinance is advanced to second reading. On second reading, item A, ordinance 3432, an ordinance amending Chapter 33, Parks, Events, and Recreation by adding new section 33-15, camping prohibited, exceptions, and providing for severability. Counselors.
Motion to adopt ordinance number 3432.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 3432. Please vote. With a vote of 4-0, the ordinance is adopted. Item 11, reports from officers and boards. Mr. Dorman.
One item, sir. Request executive session pursuant to 25 OS subsection 307B1 of the Oklahoma Open Meeting Act for the purpose of confidential communication regarding the employment, appointment, promotion, demotion, disciplining, or resignation of City Manager Norman McNichol, City Attorney John Dorman, Municipal Judge Tanya Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Dorman. Mr. McNichol.
Yes, sir. 2 items. Here's an update on the Electric Utility Department Substation Transformer Replacement Project. Sayers Construction has removed 2 power transformers, underground feeder cables, duct banks, and most foundations from the Boomer Lake substation project site. They're currently forming transformer and circuit breaker foundations in preparation to pour concrete and install underground conduit lines. Benefits will include increased capacity and standardization of our substation equipment to the same manufacturer to increase reliability and minimize repair times. There have been some serious issues with that, and I'm sure everybody was on the edge of their seat when they hear that. But item 2, we'd also want to welcome and congratulate our 4 new police officer recruits who were sworn into office this past Thursday. Rachel Bruce, Byron Gorey, Brayley Running, and Justin Sappington. And also congratulations to these 3 officers for their recent promotions. Cody Manuel promoted to lieutenant, Sean Millerman promoted to sergeant, and Todd Perry promoted to sergeant.
Excellent. Thank you.
you.
Counselor Zanotti.
We are welcoming several new employees to the Stillwater team. Chelsea Jones, a Development Services Administrative Assistant. John Frost, an Electric Entry Power Systems Technician. Brooke Gayo, Police Dispatcher 1. Jonathan Kahn, Waste Management and Entry Equipment Operator. Mick Littlefield, Waste Management Equipment Operator 1. Wyatt Denton, Waters Utility Entry Maintenance Worker. Cameron Moore, Water Utilities Entry Maintenance Worker. And Jennifer Klein, Finance Payroll and Clerk.
Well, it's a lot of new folks.
Yeah, great.
Welcome to Stillwater. Or the city. I'm sure they're probably already in Stillwater. Vice Mayor Darlington.
Yes. The latest episodes of the FYI Stillwater podcast are now live. I've heard they're very, people who hear these really like them. Our most recent episodes feature conversations with team members from the Stillwater Public Library, Emergency Management, and a 2-part feature with the Stillwater Police Department. You can listen and subscribe to FYI Stillwater on the Podbean, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify apps, or listen to it online at fyistillwater.podbean.com. Podbean's a new one.
Yeah,
it's a
I'm
new
not
one.
familiar. Councilor Jaloski.
Yes, today is April 1st, which means we are 1 year away from Census Day 2020, mandated by the U.S. Constitution and conducted every 10 years since 1790. The census in 2020 will seek to accurately tally some 140 million households and over 325 million people. More than $600 billion per year in federal money is tied to the count, as are the number of congressional seats each state has in the U.S. House of Representatives. Learn more about the work Stillwater and our fellow county cities and partners are doing now to ensure everyone gets counted on April 1st, 2020 at paynecountycensus.org.
Excellent. Thank you. I have an update on the Central Zone and 44th Avenue Water Towers Water 2040 project. The tower is currently in operation. The contractor is working to complete the final punch list items. These towers will provide an additional 1 million gallons of elevated water storage to support increasing water demand projections in the southwest area of Stillwater through the year 2040. You can learn more about the Water 2040 projects at stillwater.org/water2040. All right, that takes us to item 12, executive session. Is there a motion to enter executive session?
Motion to enter executive session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. With a vote of 4-0, we'll now enter executive session. Thank you.